sharing this and making it all happen.
It's a real privilege to be here with you all. So we had a little bit of time left, and we wanted to try and make things a little participatory to end the day on more than just sitting and listening to people talk the whole time. And folks on the live stream I think you can hop in, and can they hop into the stage? Yeah. So don't just start yelling or anything, but you're welcome to jump in and join the conversation. But we wanted to, June and I have been sort of trying to find themes or like questions implied by people's talks throughout the day. So we thought maybe we would try a couple of different discussion topics. Yeah, so maybe should we pick these off one at a time? Maybe we should pick these off one at a time. I'll try and time box them so they don't go too long on any one subject. And then at the end, we're going to put you guys to work, guys and gals to work, helping build next year's program, because next year will be the 10th anniversary, 10th edition of LIVE, and we want to make sure it's a really good one. And the people in this room, if nothing else, you can start thinking about what you want your submissions to be now. And you can nominate ideas that you hope somebody else will submit now too. Okay, so June's just getting that up on screen. Awesome. Okay, so June, do you want to read the first one there? Sorry? Do you want to read the first question? This was your proposal for a prompt here. Or do you want me to read it? This was your suggestion.
The first one is yours, right? The LLM.
Oh, okay. I thought this came out of our... Okay, I'll read it then. So we've seen a couple of different takes on the role of LLMs in live programming. And we've seen a bunch of different opinions, thumbs in all different directions earlier, in terms of how LLMs might intersect live programming. And I think one thing that is in the live programming kind of pitch is that live programming can increase user agency. So does outsourcing your code to an LLM make you a bad programmer and possibly a bad human, based on some of the thumbs and fingers I saw out there? Or does this actually just automate the grunt work that none of us should have been doing in the first place, just like moving out of assembly language to higher level languages did? I think we can see both perspectives, and I see lots of hands going up. Let's just start calling on people. Do you want to start running the mic around? Awesome. Bring us your spiciest takes.
Oh, you know it.
You are always.
Thank you, Peter. That was a great introduction. So I raised a middle finger proudly when the survey of LLMs came up, for a reason that I think is especially relevant to this room right here, which is that one of the things in live programming and a lot of the talks today were at least flirting with, if not fully embracing, visual forms of expression. And as far as everything I've seen from LLMs, it is very much language as text. And so I would be very, very interested to see if this group of people can come up with some ways to use LLMs that are not about text at all. Whether that's even possible, I don't know. Or whether it would be any good, I don't know. But I think, just personally, text is evil and bad. And if text programming is your definition of programming, then we shouldn't be programming.
If you bring an LLM visual programming environment submission, I 97% promise you have to put some work into it. But that one would be super fun. So
if you feed an LLM visual programming language, if you feed a mouse a cookie.
It's bound to ask for a recursive evaluator.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was my first thing. Lou, you had a... Yeah.
Hello. I think the question is quite tricky because, it's like saying, LLMs, it's such a diverse use of them. I think it's like saying, does coding, do computers increase or decrease user agency? I think, yeah.
Okay, now you have to say which ways would increase user agency in your opinion and which ones would decrease it. Give us, you don't have to have a definition, but give us an is Chicago, is not Chicago, right? What's a thing that would and what's a thing that wouldn't?
Well, all right, cogs are turning.
Yeah.
So I think, Maggie Appleton?
Yes.
Yeah, I share an office with her, and I think she just like, all I'm trying to do now is summarize like her most recent talk in like 2 sentences.
And we can post a link to that
Yeah,
on
yeah,
the
yeah.
Discord
And
later.
like talking about like how AI tools can do both of those things, and how when they're good they like enhance, and when they're bad they replace. So I think the big question to ask yourself is this replacing you or your employee, or is this enhancing you or your employee? And there's like cultural issues involved in that as well.
There's a great Canadian philosopher, metallurgist, and pacifist feminist, Ursula Franklin, who wrote a great book a while back called The Real World of Technology, where she classifies technologies as either empowering the individual and giving them holistic abilities to pursue their own aims, or else placing them under management and making them cogs in a machine. And I think that's a great framework for all of us to evaluate our work, and both professionally and personally.
Yeah, thanks. I'll pass it on now.
I see Clemens was waiting for me. Yeah.
I'm afraid that LLMs can introduce a certain conservatism based on what they're trained on. And I think live programming environments require us rethinking the programming models. And I think by using LLMs that are trained on the old days, we will be stuck.
Reinforcement learning gives
Yeah.
you more of what you already have.
Yeah.
This is the concern.
Different from today.
We're here, Jonathan. That's how it's different from today. We're here to break the mold.
This is it, pretty much. There are dozens of us.
Literally dozens.
I just wanted to offer a counterpoint to that from speaking from concrete examples. So last year, I with some collaborators developed this live programmable dynamic document environment, and then we decided later on to try adding LLMs, and we just sort of like Mary did, fed it the docs for our made-up spreadsheet language that we had invented, and used it as sort of an accelerator of this end-user programming environment we had already created, which had liveness and data visibility and things. And we found that we weren't just looking at textual code, we were looking at not the most visual representations, but at least tables of live data, and it sort of fit in very naturally. And so I'm quite optimistic that if we don't forget all the good stuff that this community has discovered, and we remember it and combine it with this new tool, we can get sort of strictly better experiences that are not worse in any meaningful way, and are much more empowering to get started with. And I think it would be a real shame if we sort of had like a reactionary attitude towards this new technology.
Rah, rah, rah.
Yeah.
Things were fine before.
Especially if we're all really good at programming. I think a big draw of live programming for me is accessibility to novices and education, and I think we should all be thoughtfully considering how to use LLMs in that context as an on-ramp.
Josh has had his hand up for a while. Josh. Sorry, is it Josh? Oh, I can't see through somebody's head there. Is this you talking over here? That's not.
I just want to say something about what you said about education. I think when someone asks a question and you go and you give them the answer, you're not really teaching them anything usually, and I feel like that's a lot of the experience with LLMs when people use them for programming. And so I wonder, like, whether that's real empowerment or if it's just a crutch. But
Give that microphone to the man who gave a talk about LLMs. He's been so patient there. Wait, is that not? I can't see. Okay, I don't know who's. I see just a head that's sticking. Okay. Give it to Will. Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
Thank you. Not Josh. Hi.
Can't see through. Sorry.
So, that's right.
You there with the microphone.
Me. So, I tend to think about as at the two extremes. I think about it as like LLMs are sort of. You can think about it as when you make a child literate. You are exposing them to a world of knowledge and giving them an immensely powerful tool, which of course is dangerous in some ways. You can also give a baby a loaded gun, and that's just like strictly irresponsible and dangerous, and because you recognize that no one's going to know what to do with it, and at worst they're going to harm themselves and others. And I think actually for this community in particular, I suspect the way that LLMs will intersect with live programming is data analysis. This is the gajillion-dollar market. Everyone's doing LLMs to SQL and to data visualizations, and I think this will be one of the most important domains for us to consider. And it's just being abused horribly. Like Jeff here had a great talk. He's a professor at UW, studies data visualization. And he talks about how, like, in the marketing materials for ChatGPT doing data analysis, you just say, run a data analysis on this data, and it, like, produces some pretty looking charts that don't mean anything and have, like, weird interpretive errors. And, you know, he just talks about, like, when we encourage people to use tools that way, obviously that's actively encouraging them to be completely irresponsible with their data and then to make downstream decisions that are probably going to harm people. And so
Are you implying that venture-backed startups eager to capitalize on a mega trend are just throwing together slapdash implementations of the new hotness and putting it out there without any consideration for whether it has any value?
No, I would never imply that.
Oh, good. Thank goodness. We don't have any corporate sponsors for this workshop, but if we did.
And so I think as the authors of live programming environments, I think a very interesting question is how you can, like, simultaneously provide your users agency but guide them away from making these horribly irresponsible decisions, either by making actions impossible or providing guide rails or guidance. I don't know what that guidance looks like, but I think it's one of those...
You tell GPT, please guide me towards responsible decisions.
Yeah, correct.
I'm not even joking. That stuff works really well.
Yeah. And so I think investigating that of, you know, that's an ethical consideration in the creation of these environments, and it's something that people should be talking about as they design things that incorporate LLMs.
Do we have anyone who hasn't commented yet? I want to make sure we're creating opportunities for... Mariana hasn't said much in this. I'm bad for this, and I know I put my hand up a lot too. Yeah, Josh there in the front. No, I'm kidding. It's you. Mariana, go ahead. All right.
I have something really short while Mariano's thinking about what he's going to say, since you put him on the spot. So I think a lot of us, when we're building systems, we're thinking about building collaborative systems, like systems that allow us to collaborate with others. And if you, like, brought someone else, another human, into your system, does that limit your agency? Like, if you have a coworker that joins you, does that limit your agency? So my provocation would be to think about modeling LLMs as a coworker in your system. And I think that'll help us not limit human agency.
So I've been playing on and off with it and thinking. And, like, I think there are two ways, the good way and the bad way. At least the ones I observed. There's the lazy way, which is basically, and the thing that basically grabs LLMs and applies it to the current way of doing things, which is write me a React app for a to-do app, and it will just spit whatever, and you will try to run it, and if it doesn't work, you will say, like, fix it.
Try again.
Basically, it's a Perl generator. It's kind of like a read-only, and you feed it back only to see if it fixes it. It's like really, it's not collaboration. It's like, I will try to do the work with the current set of tools that are not, of course, designed for LLMs or anything like that. But also the level of granularity, that's like coarse grain, like write me an app, which only works for, like, Twitter threads with exploding emojis and stuff like that, exploding minds emojis. But something I've tried and it has worked, and I think it's like we can use today, and it applies really well to live environments. It's in the small, like you have a hole, Hazel style or whatever, you have a thing in your app where you can grab a lot of context and you can, like, have a really contextual prompt with a lot of, like, information, and you can write half the prompt in the system because of the context, but let the user write the thing they want to achieve and only, like, fill that at least as a draft, and then, like, make a feedback loop of collaboration. Not that I've, like, 80% or more of the demos using LLMs are really lazy. Like, make them generate.
But not our speakers. Our speakers' demos were very thoughtful.
Of course not. All things here are on the right side of history. But what I mean, like, I'm talking more about the Twitter demo, like, like make it do things. It's like quoting Alan Kay. Nobody quoted Alan Kay today. Like using computers to like virtualize an office, like paper and stuff like that, and not thinking what's the native medium and like abstractions and ideas for this new technology. Of course, the initial step of any new technology is like virtualizing the old one, but like as a community, we could start thinking ahead and say like, can we start thinking and prototyping the native way of using LLMs?
And I look forward to those submissions for next year's workshop. I want to actually drag us, just in the interest of time, to a related follow-on question that's come up a few times throughout the session, which is, what is the role of expertise in these live programming systems? Lou's demo implies a heck of a lot of knowledge about cellular automata to do the interesting things they showed. And Xavier's programmable DAW takes all the difficulty of programming and then adds all the difficulty of musical composition. But a violin is not a worse instrument than a harmonica because it's harder. So I've heard a lot of people in this room in conversation and on stage saying we need to make programming easier. Yeah, Lou. Oh, sorry. There's a mic out there, yeah.
Hi, I have very strong opinions about this. I am not for making programming or creative processes easier. I think there is a lot of joy to be found and a lot of good that comes out of being stuck in a hard process. And I think that's what makes certain art forms, and this is, I'm talking within the creative space, but that's a sliding scale as well. So
is programming a creative act?
It may be more than you think. And I've done a bit of speaking to people involved in printmaking, and which is a very hard, laborious process. And I'm just curious because I don't do it. I've been asking them, why do you do this? Why do you do this really hard thing? And I have some audio recordings on my phone if you ask me afterwards. But it forces you into a different frame of mind. It allows you to focus on certain things. It allows you to communicate in a certain way. When we're coding, the limitations and parameters that are around us are sometimes hinder us, sometimes help us. Sometimes they're hurdles in the way, sometimes they're guardrails on the side, and sometimes they're walls that can be smashed for great effect. I know this is quite hypothetical, but I don't often hear people embrace the challenge and difficulty of certain tasks. I wonder how your mindset would change if you consider that.
The goal of life is not to have the easiest life. There's someone at the back we haven't heard from before. Please.
Hi, so I have a similar perspective because I conducted like 15 interviews with creative coding artists, and actually that was one of the points that they mentioned. I thought, okay, do you want to make programming easier? And they were like, no, we want it to be hard because they really like to face these challenges. So it was completely opposite that the answer I was looking for, but that's what I found, like, yeah, well, we are happy with the tools if it's hard. That's another thing that we like, and that's why we want to do this, because it's hard. It's not for everyone.
Okay, go ahead. At the back there. Yeah.
I think it depends a lot on what the goal is, right? And so, if you ask what makes a harmonica hard to play, right? Composing the song, maybe that's the hard part of playing the harmonica, right? And so
bends and draws, but yeah, go on.
I think about the Steve Jobs computer as the bicycle for the mind, right? And so you want the tool to disappear if the tool is not of interest. But if the tool is of interest, then fine, right? So, you want to sculpt with clay, and you can decide whether you're interested in the properties of the clay, or you're going to make the clay disappear and make the thing that you're trying to make, right? And, you have to decide when you're designing the clay which your goal is.
I really like this clay analogy, and I'm gonna pull that actually, and to push the conversation in a different direction, which is that clay tools are extremely simple, and the craft is in the knowledge of the user. and the practice that they have with those tools. Should we be doing the same thing with our computing tools? Why are we building such complicated things with so many features instead of making smaller tools? Is anyone making smaller, simpler tools? Xavier.
I would argue that this is kind of what I tried to hammer in my talk when I was talking about the composability of programming versus GUIs. And this is what I'm trying to do when I'm designing the project that I'm working on, which is I'm not trying to replicate all the complicated features of a DAW. I'm actually trying to find what are the critical features and isolate them in little pieces that I can sprinkle exactly where I want them. And for me, this is, I don't know if it's the thing that we should aim for, but it's something that I believe is valuable that I'm trying to aim for.
And this is not just about creativity of art, right? What Lou was talking about was struggling against the medium to find discoveries and push yourself to new places. And what you're talking about is having a minimal viable set of composable tools that allow you to work on whatever you need in the moment, which is a very different claim, I think.
Yeah.
You're not my DAW is really hard and that's the way I want it. You're I'm trying to find the essential truths that are what I need to build a DAW, if I understood you.
Okay, but I think it's connected in the sense that so for example, I play the guitar, and there's a lot of different ways that you can play the guitar. I'm kind of on the lower end in terms of skills. So I play a lot of chords. And chords are really accessible. You can learn 3 chords on the guitar very quickly, and then you can sing a basic pop song, and that's really fun. You can also play the guitar 6 hours a day for 5 years, and then play really hardcore metal songs that are really difficult. And you have this entire scale from very basic, simple things that have a lot of depth. And I think that's what I'm after personally, is the depth of the tool.
Simple things with depth, I like that claim. Clemens has been patient over there.
So I've been studying some molecular biologists that were really what we call computational disempowered from the fact that they had to use computational tools and they had to translate from a biological phenomenon to things expressed in code that they were not trained to reason about. When they used GUI applications and their practice evolved, then the GUI applications represented calcified understanding of their practice that would get outdated, so they had to patch that with various scripts that they didn't understand. So I think one problem is when people have to think in one set of concepts, but try to express them in programming that they are not interested in or skilled in doing. And I think that's the bridge we need to.
It's a great argument for easy. Yusuf had a...
Well, no.
Oh, okay. So he says no. Well, yeah, right. Biology is not easy, but it's for making the tools easier to work with. Yeah, for the biologists, for the domain people, yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry, Todd, yeah.
From a personal level, what Lou mentioned, really resonates. Of course, when you're building and you've been at it for a while and you're an expert in your craft, yeah, you feel like an artist and you enjoy that creative process, etc. But what I'm missing is, on a societal level, in a society where digital technology is increasingly important, it's powering everything and our entire society, democracy, etc. I don't want to live in a society where only 2%, maybe 0.2% know how the systems that everybody depends on use. So I think I really see it as a mission, to explore how can we make things easier. And I think, live programming definitely plays a role in that. So I think that's.
Yeah, and ownership of the software. We shouldn't be sharecroppers in our digital lives. Todd has had a hand up for a while. Sorry, Todd.
I think one of the common themes here is around this word expertise, and I think it's an important distinction to make that expertise isn't whether something is easy or simple. If you spend time with something, you become comfortable with it, and there's a level of expertise or practice in a craft that makes you good at something and see through the obstacles in a way that is unique to whatever the craft may be. printmaking or modeling with clay or programming. And then on the other side, there's this like path of easiness, which may be closer to like intuition or the pick up and play, or this wanting to get your hands dirty or make a thing. And when you have that urge to make a thing, you also push through the difficult challenge of like, okay, well, I'm going to play with clay. I've never done this before. You have to learn. You have to kind of push yourself.
So you're saying it shouldn't take 3 hours to set up a node development environment before you can start making a web page?
Oh my goodness. I don't have to say that.
Yeah, okay. And there's companies that are just trying to solve that problem in a narrow sense. Let's give the last word to Alex, and then we're going to move to a new subject.
So this is also about what Lou was saying. I think there's a difference between having to fight against a difficult problem and having to fight things that are contrived in the tool that you're using. And I think one of the things that drives me crazy about live coding for music is that often you'll see someone giving a performance and they will paste a bunch of numbers that represent some kind of beat or rhythm. And I hate that because like that's not musical to me. There's a better way to input a beat or a rhythm into the computer. And that's one of the things that I liked about Paul, actually. When I was reading your submission, there was something about mixing like recordings and all of that stuff. It seemed like you don't have to do that. And I think like, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that I'd rather use my brain cells to fight things that are hard rather than fighting the tool that I'm using.
Ooh, I really like that.
Yeah.
Let's leave that there then. That was a great summation. Thank you.
I think I
June,
should take the
please.
third one. So the third dot, why do tools for thought people tend to make a novel programming environment, or the other way around? Why are such programming environments often invented by those who make creativity support tools? This is kind of question that arises throughout the day. Like, some of you are coming from the programming language field, and other people are coming from like, artistic field. In my case, I started my career as a, HCI researcher working on programming environments, and then gradually these days, I'm shifting my focus to more artistic practices, like helping animation directors. And in Peter's case, probably, he started from the other way around, or I'm not sure. I mean, but the point is, these days, it seems like people who are interested in helping people's creativity tends to create something programmable or malleable or customizable by the end user or by programmers. How do you, as a community of people gathering at Live, how do you see these creative activities versus programming activities? Please.
As a self-described tools for thought interested person, I actually run an online monthly meetup called Tools for Thought Rocks, and I'm working on a novel programming environment, so I guess I'm the target audience for the question. There's a really great post by a guy named Linus Lee, and I'll give you the post title, and it really tells you what you need to, what the point here, which is build tools around workflows, not workflows around tools. And I think the answer here about like why do we continue to build customizable environments is because the way that we all have very different ways of working and ways of thinking. And when we want to use our tools to help us, like assist us in our work and our thinking, our workflows all look subtly different. And yet all of the tools that we adopt nowadays, when you have SaaS tools that are available for us, they encode a very specific workflow. And then you are required to adapt yourself to that workflow. And what we should be doing instead is be thinking about what is the workflow that I personally want? How do I plan to accomplish this task? And then we should be able to wrap tools around that. And right now it's backwards.
Yeah, one thought that came to mind when watching the presentation, the second last presentation, where they built this state debugging environment, was this felt very similar to if you've worked with React and Redux, there's a Redux browser extension that allows you to rewind your events and replay them, and thinking
could they have done that project, but instead say forked that browser extension and made it like render different paths of events within that browser extension and like achieve the same kind of goal, but then had an outcome where it's a tool that like, oh, maybe it works and like almost every developer in the world can install it and start to use it. And it makes me, and then so I don't know the answer to the question, but it makes me think like there's so many cool projects that come out of these like communities and ideas, but they often like fail to connect with those real world kind of environments and fail to scale and sustain themselves in that way. And like the example of this presentation felt like it also like brought up the same question for me, yeah?
My brother is a really good software engineer. Like he built half of the cargo tool for Rust. He's insanely talented. And I was talking with him about his dev tool setup. Because for me, tools for thought is think about it as dev tools. I was like, oh, which Rust language server do you use? He's like, what? What do you mean? No, like, how do you jump to definition? A grep. I was like, what? We have such good tools that do this instantaneously. Why don't you just use them? I know grep. What else would I need? Right? And I think that,
Just a note for people here, if you're developing in the front end, there are log points in the Chrome debugger. You don't need to put console.logs and refresh. You can just right-click on the line of code and make it a log point. You don't need to pause execution. It's just, that's a pro tip.
Thank you. And I feel like there's something deep there I think about all the time, which is knowing one tool that works everywhere and knowing it extremely well is such a valuable thing because you can learn it very deeply. You never have to, you can apply it in every environment. In the case of grep, right? Anything that's text representable is greppable, whereas the Rust language server only works with Rust. And many of the live programming environments we've seen today only work for a very specific niche. And I think that's something that's very hard to talk about and to balance against. And all the other concerns, right? Every tool you adopt, there's the learning curve of the tool, there's all the things you have to deal with every time the version breaks, and it doesn't work with your other tools, and it has to work on your operating system, and maybe it's research software, so it sucks in a ton of ways. And I think people in practice just like, they so are biased against that trade-off. They would rather use a small set of tools that consistently work, and it's difficult to make, or I think as people who want to make tools for thought to balance against that. I've never really found a good way to work around it, but I think it's a really critical trade-off that we often don't discuss enough.
Universality versus domain specificity, is that how you would describe that trade-off?
Yeah, I think that's part of it.
Go ahead.
I think there's an interesting related problem that I was reminded of by the Unix grep example, which is that often each live programming tool imagines its own world and doesn't have a story for how it would compose with other live programming tools, which is different from textual programming, tends to have a stronger starting point for that. I would highly recommend, there's this work called Live Rich Composable by Josh Horwitz and Jeff Here. I think it was not presented at Live, I think it was at Plateau or something, but they imagined some primitives for composing live programming tools together, and I think that's a really interesting direction for this community to be thinking about if we want all of these ideas to ever be real and to be out there and working together in any way.
Also check out Polytope by Elliot Evans. You may have heard of it, but it's this really, I think it's a similar idea. It's a really novel and like genius way of combining different programming language environments, different editors together. It's Polytope. I'll post a link in the Discord. He's also a really nice guy. So, yeah.
Just a note, Clemens grad student, what's his name? The knowledge work paper? Yes, Midas Nouwen's paper on how basically we have it good. We're the lucky ones. We can pick our IDEs. I don't get forced to use Vim or Emacs when I join a company because the founder picked Vim or Emacs. I can choose my own editor, but if you're a writer or a journalist, you go to an organization and you use the CMS that the understaffed IT team set up 5 years ago before they got laid off in the last round of layoffs, and now you have to use it and nobody likes it. At least we can pick our tools. We should give that courtesy to our colleagues who don't have the same power that we have over the computers.
So I feel like I'm not allowed to disagree with what was just said. But as an idealist, I don't like hearing these kinds of point of view because what happens is this. You say, well, it's really important that we enable these tools to work together so that they can integrate and things can be real. And Alan Kay once said that reality is a low-pass filter, and he's very right. And so I worry that if we focus too much on practicalities like what we're just talking about, and we achieve this goal of like widespread use, we are not going to understand what we have given up. And so I think that in conjunction with the work that is being suggested right now, I also want to urge people to do this kind of blue sky, let's reject the way everything works right now, and let's do something completely novel that does not have an interaction story with the rest of the world, so that we can see what purity looks like, even if it's completely impractical. At least we'll know some, like, I believe in extremes, I guess, and then we can do a better job of the middle ground.
As a community, we can do both, and we must. If we just have wild ideas and never ship them, then only those of us in this room will ever know. And if we never have any good ideas, then we will stay in the same miserable hole we've dug ourselves.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
And then I'll shut up. So I think about the things that I make, I think of it like a fashion show, where
I love that.
yeah. So like Cell Pond is like something you put down a catwalk. I'm not going to sell it in stores. Like, no one wear it, please. It's designed not to be worn in the real world. It's designed to move fashion forward. And there are some tools that are not supposed to be for the catwalk. They're supposed to be like, hey, you know, we took some ideas from the latest fashion show, and you can wear it for real now. So I would encourage you to know what your tool is. Is it something on the catwalk, or is it something, you know, for the supermarket?
This is a great analogy. Thank you. I see. Should we give Xavier the last word? We have one more theme, and we're already kind of over time.
I just have one thing to say is like, you were talking about what's going to be at Live next year. I would love to see, you know, you were talking about let's be idealistic. I would love to see people do things in the live programming environment that are much, much lower level than what we're seeing. Like, what if you decided to build a new computer infrastructure on FPGA with this idea of live programming in mind, or something like this? Like, I think that would be very interesting.
Thank you for an excellent transition to our closing subject, which is next year is Live 10. We hope you'll all be in, do we know what city it's in? Does anybody know? Pasadena, California. So come on down, y'all. So, okay, you want to see an FPGA-backed live programming system. That's awesome. What else do people want to see? And a couple of things that I might suggest. One is, can you nominate a system that you didn't work on that you would love to see here? Because I think it's easy to promote your own work, but when you think about stuff that isn't in this room, who should we be encouraging to submit? The other thing is, if you've been coming to this session for a while, are there ideas that are still rolling around in your head, a talk you saw 5 years ago that we can email the authors of and like ask them to resubmit? Similarly, are there things, like June, you were telling me about instrumental interactions?
Yes, Michel.
Yeah, from Michel.
Michel Tora from La Font.
What he said. But that's like how search and replace works now. And when he wrote that paper, it was not. So, you know, like we can change things. You know, sometimes we do. Are there other things that maybe came from this room and are out there in the world now? Or vice versa, are there things out there in the world beyond the sort of academic practice where we can point at it and say like, yeah, this is a good idea. We should think about this in this room too. Mariano has a thing.
I will do a bad trick and answer the two questions in one thing, but I think they're related. I think I interpreted the last one a little bit wrong, but I noticed a pattern. I think all demos today were web browser based and JavaScript based. And that kind of answers why the tools of thought people do their own stuff, is because there's nothing other than JavaScript and Markdown that can be used to create live environments. Also, I think like Markdown and text as like at the upper bound of complexity of the problem makes it easy to create your own tools. You don't have to create like Haskell or whatever. But like related to the current one, like why is it the case that we have to, if we are so far like experimental, and I'm pro JavaScript by the way, but we are forced to use JavaScript, and I like it. But
we're not.
And why the pattern of everybody using JavaScript? But if we have to, like either the question is, can we use something else? Can we improve something else? Or if not, if JavaScript is the best way, can we like try to move it towards more features that we can use to build better live environments? Can we like try to steer industry into adding features or improving or whatever? Or if not, do we have to create a new one from the ground up? Do we modernize Smalltalk? Do we like, I don't know. Please answer the question. Next year.
I'm looking for hands. Do people, Zafir has a...
I won't answer it.
Yeah.
You can do what I did, which is use Rust, but I don't know if it's a much better solution.
The Rustations are here. I will also point out this is kind of, we have a bias in this room towards web development. There's a massive industry which does more money every year in revenue than I think probably all the productivity tools combined, and that's game development. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of live programming kinds of practices and patterns in that community that were not represented at all today. So if you know folks who work in that side of the house, they should be here.
I have a request for more ethnography. And what I mean by that is how are people using real systems in the real world and what is missing and that kind of stuff. Like bring to this room the gaps that we should be filling, because a lot of times we spend time in our own little bubbles and we're not aware of there's this significant group of users and here's how they are accomplishing their computational tool needs. And let me talk about some of the gaps.
Yeah, I know Clemens has some grad students or has had grad students working in that space. You can tell them to submit.
I'm going to do some wish casting, and this is related to Lou's fashion show idea. But I would like to see somebody demo a kind of programming that does not look recognizable as programming. I think Lou's talk this morning was close to that, and I would just like to see more of that stuff because it motivates a kind of an approach to this space that to me does not feel incremental. It feels like a wholly different kind of thing. And so if we found some of that, that would make me personally very happy.
All right, should we wrap it here, Jen?
Yeah.
All right. Send us these submissions, please, for next year. This will be a great workshop if you go out and write papers about these things. You have a whole year if you start now. So we'll look forward to madly put together abstracts in 9 months. You'll have some time to finish the paper after the submission. Yeah, I mean, thanks for coming, everybody. And thanks, Jun. Jun did most of the organizing, and I'm deeply grateful to him because this would not be here without him and without Jonathan, who started this 9 sessions ago.
So yeah, I would say it's really like a kind of complementary relationship where he's really good at structuring things and coming up with all these nice topics like grouping talks and all these things. And whereas I am also enjoying this kind of organizing with him, and also I really kind of enjoyed having discussion with all of you. And yeah, in short, I kind of love this community where people love to build, but also love to kind of trying to understand what people are doing in this programming activities. And so yeah, thank you all.
This was a fun day. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And thanks to anybody who caught this online or is watching the live stream. Submit your talks when you see the call for papers later. All right.
Yeah.
Great job. Yes.
Thanks, guys. This was a
there you go. Hey, Jeffrey, Jonathan says you're co-chairing this year. Sorry. So I think blueprints is really interesting.